Good afternoon and welcome to the final webinar in our Let's Talk Poultry series in collaboration with Alltech Ireland. My name is Rebecca Tierney and I am the Poultry Advisor within Teagasc. I am delighted to be joined by Niall Brennan, Project Manager and Poultry Co-ordinator for Ireland for Alltech. Today's speaker is Peter Duggan, Sector Manager of Pig Meat and Poultry at Bord Bia. Today Peter will give us an insight into current trends in the poultry industry, and he'll also discuss some of the marketing measures being undertaken by Bord Bia. I want to thank you all for your attendance to today's webinar and indeed the rest of the series. We have been delighted with the attendance and interaction from you, our poultry producers. This is testament to your willingness to learn and progress in the industry. I want to draw your attention to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and I want to invite you to input any questions you have for Peter, and we will address these at the end of today's presentation. So I'm now going to pass you over to Niall Brennan to introduce Peter.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. So by way of introduction, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Peter Duggan. Peter hails from County Laois, where he grew up on a dry stock and tillage farm. He studied food business and management in UCD, and for the last 11 years, he's been with Bord Bia, firstly as a business analyst, and over the last 6 years as a sector manager for pig meat and poultry. So, Peter, I'd like to hand over to you now and just deliver your presentation. And as Rebecca said, anyone who has questions, please be aware of the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah. Thank you, Niall, and also thanks to Rebecca as well for inviting me along today to speak at this important meeting. Also, thanks to the guys for setting up this webinar. I think it's gone down extremely well. Rebecca was telling me this morning that there's been between 120 and 180 participants or attendees to these webinars. So I'd really like to thank them for all the hard work that they've done, and also giving me the opportunity just to give you a snapshot of where the Irish poultry and egg industry is at the moment. So I'm going to just try and share my screen with you here, so just bear with me for a second. So I think that I should be sharing with you there right now. So sorry for the delay. So without any further ado, I'd just like to get into this discussion then. So I'll be covering off QA members, where we stand within the scheme in terms of egg producers and in terms of chicken producers. Looking then at the Sustainable Poultry Products Assurance Scheme in terms of what's new within this new accredited scheme. Then touching on production, just looking at what's happening in Ireland, but also looking at what's happening on a more global stage. Following this then, I'll be looking at promotional activities and just looking at how our promotional campaigns have performed and what's coming up. In terms of consumer behaviour then, obviously there's been a lot of changes in terms of consumer behaviour, especially in light of COVID-19, and just some kind of key takeouts in terms of how consumers have responded or reacted to the pandemic, and maybe some considerations that the industry might want to take on board going forward. So in terms of the poultry situation then, in terms of our QA scheme in the Republic of Ireland, we have 418 poultry sites in the Republic of Ireland. And as you can see, chicken accounts for around 3/4 of those poultry sites. Turkey then accounts for the vast majority of the remainder. However, there are a small number of specialist turkey or duck producers, which bring up the total number to 418. As you can see, Monaghan really is the centre of these poultry sites in the Republic of Ireland. They account for over 50% of the poultry sites, but given the legacy of the poultry industry in counties such as Limerick, you know, that's the second most important county in terms of poultry sites with around 77. So between Monaghan and Limerick combined, you're talking around 75% of production being based in these two counties alone. If you look below Limerick, you can see counties such as Cavan, Cork, Waterford, Mayo, also being important counties for where poultry sites are located, and that's partly due to the location of where the processing industry is situated. In terms of egg production sites then, we have around 186 production sites in the Republic of Ireland. And again, you can see here that Monaghan really features very strongly, and it accounts for in excess of over 50% of production. And that really reflects the strong heritage that producers in Monaghan have in terms of producing both eggs, but also poultry products, and also reflects their strong entrepreneurial spirit that resides in that county. In terms of the other two key counties, it's the likes of Cavan and Meath, which account for another, I suppose, 45 sites. So again, that's no real surprise given the location of the egg packing industry really in and around that area of the country. In terms of the production system then, you can see that production or free range sites account for 135 sites out of the 186. So, you know, there's been strong growth in terms of the number of free range sites over the last number of years, reflecting strong consumer demand for free range products. If you look at free range sites, they account for around 43% of production. While it's colony production or enriched colony production, the number of sites are smaller. They do account for, you know, 53% of overall production. So those sites are really important for providing a consistent supply of eggs to the market. Organic egg sites then are growing. They've grown to around 18 in recent years. But still they only account for 3% of overall egg production in Ireland. And moving on then to barn, we've got 3 sites, and these 3 sites account for about 1% of overall production. So looking at standards then, you can see here that we've basically transitioned from our poultry products quality assurance scheme to our Sustainable Poultry Products Assurance Scheme in November 2019. It was accredited. In terms of launching this scheme, we actually hoped that we would have launched the scheme earlier in the year, but obviously with COVID and with avian influenza, that has delayed, you know, rolling out this scheme. So once these two things settle down, we hope to roll out the scheme when we can introduce training and on-site audits. I suppose in terms of the scope of the standard, there's 3 new elements to this standard. So in terms of the first element, that's around breeder rearing. So day-olds that are raised to point of lay. Breeder laying, where eggs are laid for supply to hatcheries. And then on the hatchery side of things, eggs are hatched to produce day-old for supply to poultry producers. And then in terms of the production then, for the 4th element, that's as it was from the previous standard, but it's just around a standard for the day-olds that are raised to slaughter age. So in terms of the objectives then, they're really around demonstrating to customers that poultry meat is produced under an accredited sustainability and quality assurance scheme, to set out the criteria for best practice at all stages in the poultry production process, and to perform a uniform mechanism for recording and monitoring compliance of participants with quality assurance, food hygiene and food safety criteria, and then lastly to measure the level of sustainability improvement over time. So really the benefits of participation in this standard is really twofold. It's around on-farm benefits, and then secondly around industry benefits. So for the on-farm benefits, really sustainability and efficient production go hand in hand. So quality and sustainability measures can deliver environmental and economic benefits. It allows members to meet both regulatory and market demands. And on the industry benefits side of things, it effectively communicates the marketing credentials with our key customers. And secondly, creates a market preference for certified produce amongst customers. And I suppose this is really key. A lot of retailers or end customers, they're looking for something different. And I suppose a lot of them are trying to meet their own corporate social responsibility. So if they can source product from suppliers who prove their sustainability credentials, that's an added bonus. So in terms of what is new within this standard, well, producers must engage in a Campylobacter improvement plan with their abattoir. They must show their highest priority, critically important antimicrobials that they use, and their usage methods that are adhered to by the DAFM recommendations. They must develop an animal welfare plan. Once developed, it must be implemented in consultation then with the veterinary practitioner and reviewed annually. In terms of the new standard, we're going to be measuring a lot of sustainability data that will determine the carbon footprint of each of these production houses. In terms of the staff welfare and the workplace policy, there's producers will have to adhere to this and will have to have a document in place for their staff. They will have to undertake a rodent control plan in line with the CRRU code. And for anybody that is handling chemicals, they must be registered with DAFM as a professional user. In terms of the biosecurity protocols, in terms of how you get into a house, how you exit the house, those sorts of procedures must be documented. And then in terms of litter that is sourced from an approved supplier, that must be also documented as well. In terms of the catching protocols then as well, that must also be documented in terms of who's in charge of that particular practice and so on. So in terms of the next section of this presentation, I'll be focusing around production. So I'll be discussing poultry supplies, EU supplies, the Chinese market situation and global export developments, along with the layer situation at the moment. So in terms of Irish poultry supplies at the moment, I suppose if you were to go back to around 2007, 2008, our poultry supplies were in the order of around 75 million birds being processed per annum. If you moved on to 2019, we actually processed a record kill of around 106 million birds. And looking at 2020, you can see that our processing capacity has increased, and in terms of the numbers that we're processing, they've reached a record again for the first half of the year, where we've processed 55 million birds. So if you extrapolate that for the full year, we are going to be processing in the order of around 110 million birds. So that will again break record levels from last year. So if you look at the EU market situation then next, at the start of the year, JIRA were anticipating that production would go up modestly due to the impact of African swine fever in Asia, and basically the consumer pull from African swine fever as a result of that, and combined with low kind of feed costs that are continuing to persist. However, given COVID-19 and given the incidence of high pathogenic avian influenza across Eastern and Central Europe, especially in relation to Poland, this situation is not likely to take place, given that Polish export demand has been significantly reduced, as they cannot tap into the Chinese market any longer. Also, in terms of other EU markets that Poland targets, they've also been impacted due to COVID-19 because of the food service industry has been decimated in most European markets as a result of COVID-19. So if you look at the next slide then, it's just around Chinese chicken industry, and I suppose the changing dynamic within that. So if we go back to 2018 there, you can see that production is around 12 million tons. And if you move forward to 2020 and what the USDA are anticipating that production will increase by an extra million tons to around 15 million tons for 2020 compared to 2019. And if you look back to 2018, around 3 million tons higher. And that's all on the back of African swine fever, where Chinese pygmy production has fallen by around 50% from 54 million tons back in 2018 to around 27 million tons in 2020. So as you can see, there's a huge demand for protein in the Chinese market. And as a result of that need for animal protein, you can see that chicken imports have gone from around 300,000 tons in 2018. So I've mapped out the import line there in the orange line, and you can see it's gone from 300,000 tons up to over 900,000 tons for 2020. So a huge demand for animal protein as a result of African swine fever. So looking at the next slide then, and who's benefiting really from this increase in demand that we're seeing from China, you can see the different regions that are mapped out here, and Brazil for sure is benefiting, the US and also Thailand has benefited from this increase in Chinese demand, whereas Europe is actually not benefiting because of avian influenza and because a number of the key exporters in Europe have been suspended from supplying the Chinese market. So just before I finish up on the production side of things, I just wanted to touch on layers in Ireland. And you can see that there's been a huge increase in the number of layers in Ireland over the last number of years. So if you look at 2012, we had about 2.8 million layers. And I forecasted for 2019 that we'd reach, or we should have reached around 3.7 million layers, reflecting the strong demand for eggs amongst Irish consumers that we're seeing at the moment. I suppose for 2020, that layer number is most likely going to come back, and it's probably going to fall back to be maybe around 3.4 to 3.5 million ahead, given the high incidence of avian influenza in key sites, I suppose, in the Republic of Ireland over the last number of months. And I suppose in terms of that number falling, it will be impacted by, I suppose, how quickly the industry can recover in terms of restocking. So, but for sure, the number of layers are going to fall for 2020. So in terms of promotional activities, in terms of the domestic chicken and egg campaign, I will outline what we're doing within these campaigns and some of the results, and then just touch on some global initiatives that are taking place at the moment to try and support both the chicken and the egg categories.
I got my
Life is more interesting when people bring their own flavour.
I got my own thing going. You're gonna realize I go my way.
So whether you follow the recipe to a T or your cooking style is a little more free, make it zesty, make it spicy. Chicken can be whatever you make it. Chicken, make it your way. And always choose chicken with the Bord Bia quality mark.
The highest standards verified at every stage.
So I hope that clip you were able to hear it. If you weren't able to hear it, apologies. But in terms of the campaign, what we're trying to do with that and the chicken industry and Bord Bia came together around 2 to 3 years ago to try and raise awareness around chicken in terms of the whole bird. Whole bird consumption had fallen considerably. So one of the big asks was around developing a campaign to try and highlight whole birds, but also to highlight the flexibility and the versatility around chicken that can be incorporated into a range of different recipes and mealtime occasions. So in terms of the January 2020 poultry campaign, I have some of the results here, so I'll just share them with you very quickly. 72% of all who consume chicken at home claim to always or sometimes look for the Bord Bia quality mark. 82% claim to either always or sometimes purchase chicken that carries the Bord Bia quality mark. And 86% of all adults now claim to consume chicken at home on at least a weekly basis. The proportion consuming a couple of times a week has witnessed the most growth since September 2019. I suppose this slide here then just shows the impact of COVID then. And this slide is taken from Kantar. So it's a measure tree which shows poultry demand has increased substantially in the latest 12-week period. And this is ending the 14th of June. And it compares against the corresponding period in 2019. And really it shows that the volume of poultry has increased in Ireland in terms of consumption, up by 21%. And this is being driven by buyers buying more product, but also new buyers coming into the category. So that's really a big positive, I suppose, from COVID-19 is that a lot of consumers are, I suppose, returning to cooking from scratch and placing a lot more emphasis on quality food.
These are baked eggs. Dinner hosting, no coasting, recipe flick, dish picked, eggs cracking, flavour packing, table set, guest met, dished out, great shout, 5-star baked eggs. Eggs, crack on.
These are scrambled eggs. Swimming, done, shop, run, in the door. Eggs ×4, quick mix, hunger fix, too easy, so cheesy. All sharing, kids raring, play date. Can't wait, out again. Scrambled eggs. Eggs, crack on.
This is egg salad. A work done, mates rung, homebound, eggs found, short prep, 3-step, fresh dinner, protein winner, night calls, can't stall, check map, cab app, hit the road, egg salad. Eggs, crack on.
And I just showed you 3 videos there that just demonstrate what we're doing in terms of promoting eggs. It's just obviously highlighting the versatility, how quickly you can make meal solutions out of eggs. So in terms of the results of the October egg campaign, I'd just like to share some of the results with you. So 84% of all adults claim to consume eggs a couple of times a week. 9 out of 10 adults believe that eggs are easy to cook, are high in protein, are a convenient meal option. 89% claim that TV adverts encourages them to look out for eggs with the Bord Bia quality mark, and 85% claim that the ads made them want to buy more eggs. So again, looking at how the egg category has performed, this is looking at it in the last 52-week period, but also in the last 12-week period. So if you look at the last 52-week period ending the 14th of June, You can see that the egg category has performed solidly. It's up by around 5%, around 151 million spent on the category. But if you look at the 12-week performance, and this, I suppose, takes into consideration the impact of COVID, you can see that consumers have spent 26% more in the egg category. So 43 million spent in that 12-week period. And that really reflects, again, consumers cooking more from scratch. They're obviously doing a lot more home baking. So that's really helped lift the sector during this period. Just in terms of some kind of global initiatives that are taking place or have just started to take place, this campaign is actually going to be rolling out from the start of this month. So this is a campaign which is centered around pork and poultry. It's a submission that I put into the European Commission in April of last year. So in October, November, I would have received word from the European Commission that I was successful with this submission in terms of promoting pork and poultry in these two markets. So for China, we are trying to roll out a promotional campaign for both pork and for poultry. However, for Mexico, it's just for pork. We only received market access to the Mexican market actually only a few weeks ago. And I suppose the big challenge for us for China and around poultry is around securing market access. So that's the number one priority for us. And some of these activities that I've outlined here, the KT program will be instrumental in terms of trying to secure that market access. But besides that, you know, it's really about developing the market collateral or the marketing collateral that can be used after the lifespan of this campaign, which is a 3-year program. So it's around developing marketing collateral in line with videos. So around producing meet the farmer video, meet the processor video, just so that we raise that awareness amongst the target audience that we're trying to penetrate in these markets. Is around developing brochures, you know, undertaking more photography to highlight our key credentials. So that's what we're doing in terms of EU programs. In terms of our egg initiatives, we are undertaking this B2C egg campaign in the United Arab Emirates, and really is just highlighting that Ireland is a safe and trusted partner country. Eggs are produced to the highest safety standards. In terms of the marketing that we're doing at the moment around that, in terms of raising that awareness with customers, customers in this market will be able to click into this link that's highlighted in green here to find out where the eggs are available in that particular market. In terms then of COVID, obviously COVID has led to an awful lot of uncertainty and volatility, and really across all sectors there's been significant disruption to trade, to production, and to consumption. And we have done some research in Bord Bia, which I suppose shows the change in consumer behaviour since the COVID restrictions were put in place. So if you look here, you can see the frequency of purchase, and what we've done here is we've mapped out frequency of purchase pre-COVID and post, or since the COVID restrictions have been put in place. So the blue line there shows, for chicken, shows pre-COVID that the frequency of purchase for all consumers stood at around 71%, and since the restrictions have been put in place, frequency of purchase rose to around 77%. The same we've seen for turkey. You know, we've seen a big increase in terms of the frequency of purchase there. In terms of, I suppose, the key kind of takeout from this particular slide is that the older cohort has brought into this category more frequently since March. In terms of the next slide, then I suppose there's a lot of information in this slide. So I suppose the key takeout is that, you know, habit is the key motivation for chicken purchase. Consumers are tending to stick to their familiar favorite foods since COVID-19. And the other key drivers are the ease of preparation, price, provenance, and health concerns, which are further down the list. And I suppose some of the key takeouts really from COVID in terms of the behavioral changes, and I suppose, you know, these are really key considerations for the food industry going forward, is that in terms of stocking up on essential food and drink, 41% are doing this more. And as a result of COVID then as well, 27% expect to do this more in the future. In terms of cooking from scratch, I've mentioned this a few times already earlier in this presentation, but 32% are doing this more, but 61% expect to do this more in the future. So this is, I suppose, a real positive for the industry in terms of eggs and in terms of chicken, especially for whole chicken, where consumers might purchase these products more frequently, and then even for eggs, you know, there's going to be a lot more baking, by the sounds of it, going to be done in the future. In terms of eating for improved immunity, 29% are doing this more. And I suppose in terms of what's going to happen down the line, 71% expect to do this more in the future. So again, you know, in terms of improving people's health, you know, this is a big takeout from this research. And I suppose it's up to the industry as well to highlight the key positive characteristics that are associated with, you know, poultry products and also egg products. In terms then of the familiar kind of favorite foods, 27% were doing this more, but in the future, 32% expect to do this in the future. So I suppose in summary then, I've kind of highlighted the Bord Bia scheme, the new scheme that's hopefully going to be launched in the next number of months, all going well if COVID starts to settle down and avian influenza settles down as well. In terms of the member update then, you can see really the importance of Monaghan to both poultry and egg production. In terms of promotional activity, I've given you a quick kind of snapshot in terms of what we're doing in terms of chicken activity, but also in terms of egg activity. And I suppose there's been a lot of positive results from those campaigns as well. The next chicken campaign is actually going to be in September. In terms of global production, that is trending upwards, and that's trending upwards due to what's happening in China. That demand for animal protein continues to increase on the back of African swine fever. In terms of Ireland, you're seeing production continuing to grow as Irish consumers continue to favour chicken products. And then in terms of the EU is probably bucking this trend, and that's due to avian influenza and the knock-on impact that avian influenza has had, and also due to COVID-19 in terms of the food industry or the food service industry really slowing down significantly as we moved into Q2 this year as a result of COVID. And then in terms of that consumer behaviour, you're seeing a lot of interesting things come out, especially in terms of that immunity piece, where consumers are really, you know, taking that very seriously, and food can play an integral part in terms of, you know, improving the health of people. So some really interesting stuff coming out of that kind of COVID consumer behavior analysis that we've undertaken. And obviously the industry, you know, should consider those impacts very carefully as well in terms of future developments. So that really kind of summarizes my presentation, and I'm more than happy to take any questions around this presentation or just in general. So, yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much, Peter. I think that was there was a lot of information in that. It's great to see the amount of work that Bord Bia are doing to promote Irish poultry. One question I have for you. At the moment, you showed the trend that there was an increase in consumption or purchases of poultry. What is the expectation of that going into the future as we come back to a more normal environment?
Yeah, I think it's chicken is in a very good position at the moment. Obviously, given the price point that chicken is at as well, it will continue to be a product that will be sought out, especially as we move through COVID. And, you know, obviously there's going to be economic implications, and obviously the price point of both poultry products and egg products will help to kind of, you know, stimulate further demand. And obviously the promotional campaigns that we're rolling out is helping to highlight the positive kind of credentials within poultry meat and also within eggs as well. So look, I think it's quite positive overall.
That's super.
Perfect. Just another question there for you, Peter. In your slides, you talked about the new poultry standards, and you talked about the benefits, and you listed off economic benefits. So what are the economic benefits to the grower that you expect this new standard will bring over the older standard?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it's in terms of the different techniques, it's kind of, I suppose putting the different techniques or the different kind of sustainability kind of techniques down on paper, and then just looking at, you know, how you're managing your feed, how you're managing your usage of antibiotics, all of that sort of stuff, and mapping that out, and obviously trying to improve your animal welfare will also be very important. And if you can improve around the animal welfare, look, that's going to have a knock-on impact in terms of, you know, the economic kind of savings that you'll be able to make at farm level, even in terms of the biosecurity. If you're able to make improvements around biosecurity in terms of reducing kind of animal stress, that's going to have a knock-on impact as well. So it's just kind of focusing the mind, or asking producers, I suppose, to focus more around the different practices that are applied on a routine basis, which will be a win-win for everybody.
Super. Just another question in there from the audience. How much of your marketing focuses on sustainability and low emissions of chickens? So that's it's a fairly topical one at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose at the moment, sure, like all our schemes at the moment are kind of migrating towards sustainability. We have the beef and lamb and dairy schemes, which have already integrated sustainability, and obviously within the poultry, that's accredited, and we hope to launch it there in the next number of months. And then even within the pig standard, we're hoping to have that scheme accredited in the next number of months, and obviously have it launched maybe by year end as well. So it's where we're going. It's the direction that we've taken a number of years ago, and we're making a lot of progress around that.
Perfect. So in your presentation, Peter, you mentioned that you expect to see the number of laying hens fall in 2020, obviously due to avian influenza and its effects. So that meant there was a shortage of eggs, but people seem to be willing to buy non-Bord Bia eggs. What would be your comment on that, or how do we improve or encourage our Irish people to buy Irish?
Yeah, like obviously we have the campaigns there that we roll out every year in terms of trying to encourage consumers to look for the Q mark. Hopefully we can recover quickly in terms of egg or layer numbers, and obviously there's a lot of progress being made at the moment in terms of restocking, but the likelihood is we're still going to be back in 2019 levels, but hopefully we can make more progress on that over the next couple of months. Yeah.
Super. Another couple in here now. There we go. How does Bord Bia support or encourage the use of technology in poultry industry to improve animal welfare or performance outcomes?
I suppose, look, in terms of that support, it might be around the Tams. I think this question is more Tams related, and obviously, look, we're in close dialogue, I suppose, with the Department of Agriculture, and Department of Agriculture, we make recommendations to the Department of Agriculture along with other stakeholders, and I believe there has been an increase in funding to the poultry industry in the last few months to help these producers, make those improvements in terms of technology.
Super.
Perfect. So I suppose we all are aware of the plan to remove colony cages by 2025. What area do you see increasing? Would you see a free range becoming the most popular, or do you see an increase maybe for barn eggs?
Yeah, and it's a very interesting question, and I know there's a lot of dialogue around that, but in terms of where, I've kind of discussed it in that slide that barn egg accounts for just around 1% of total production. In terms of the number of sites, there's only 3% of the total number of sites that are barn. And in terms of going forward, to drive that, it's those kind of commercial conversations that I suppose will take place between the egg packers and between the retailers around whether they're happy to charge more for those types of eggs from that barn type of system of production. Obviously from the enriched colony system of production, that's where our value egg is coming from. So it's just really, a lot of it is going to revolve around those commercial conversations around, what the price point is going to be further down the line for those barn eggs. And another thing around the barn eggs is around awareness levels and consumers, maybe lack of awareness when it comes to barn eggs. They mightn't just quite get what barn eggs is. So there's, I think, a body of work to be done around this, and I think time will tell a lot in terms of how this evolves.
That's perfect. So Peter, I think with that we will wrap up the session. I'd like to thank you very much, and for Bord Bia for coming on today. I think there was a lot of relevant and interesting information there, and a good pipeline of what's coming down the track in terms of marketing Irish poultry, eggs, and duck and turkey. So as a whole, I would like to thank our audience for being part of this. I'd like to thank Rebecca for having us on and for collaborating on this series. So with that, I'll pass over to Rebecca. But from Alltech's point of view, thanks everyone for your contribution to this webinar series.
Thanks a million, Niall. So with that draws our Let's Talk Poultry webinar series to a close. Peter, thanks a million for your excellent presentation, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. I want to thank you, our producers, for your interaction and attendance throughout this series. Our industry players, our integrators, egg packers, rearers, hatcheries, nutritional companies, and the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine for your support in this series. It definitely could not have been possible without you. To all of our speakers, thank you for taking the time to prepare and deliver your presentation. The feedback we have received has been excellent, so thank you for the wealth of knowledge you have given us. I want to thank Niall and Alltech for the collaboration on the series also. Niall and I have been delighted with the support, attendance and interaction we've received. Today's webinar, and indeed all of the previous webinars, have been recorded and are available on the Teagasc websites along with the presentations. So that's all from me and Teagasc. So goodbye and stay safe.